Call to order, Bedford Township Planning Commission regular meeting, February 27th, 2019. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Karen, could you take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Garvick?
Here.
Mr. Jenkins?
Here.
Mr. Fritz?
Here.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Here.
Mr. Zebek?
Here.
Mr. Anger?
Here.
Stefan is excused.
Thank you, Karen. Next, we move on to the approval of the agenda. If anyone agrees with the agenda, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion approved. Next, we have the approval of the minutes of the January 23rd, 2019 meeting. And for anyone that was here, I will entertain a motion for the minutes.
So moved. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion approved. Next, we move on to public comment. This is for anyone that would like to speak on anything that is not a part of the other two public comments that we have tonight. This is just for any in general information. Seeing that we have none, we'll move on to new business. The first is an open to the public hearing regarding the request of White Diamond Development for final PUD approval and a rezoning from R2B single-family residential to PUD for Apple Creek Estates, a 20-unit site condominium plan unit development project on the parcel number 5802-033-04905, located off Jackman Road, north of Smith Road. Karen, can you give us some background?
Again, the project name is Apple Creek Estates. Applicant is White Diamond Development, and the request is for final PUD approval for a 20-unit condominium project located off of Jackman Road, north of Smith Road, and for a rezoning of parcel number 5802-033-04905 from R2B to PUD. The plus or minus 23.78 acre parcel has a total of approximately 638 feet of frontage on Jackman Road, which provides one means of ingress-egress. The proposed development has a boulevard-type ingress-egress with two crossovers. On January 16, 2018, the Township Board granted approval of the depth of the proposed cul-de-sac, and on July 3, 2018, the Township Board granted preliminary approval for Apple Creek PUD. Those minutes were included in your packet for information. A letter of approval was received from the Monroe County Road Commission on 1/24/19 with conditions, the Monroe County Drain Commission on 2/5/19 with conditions, Mannequin Smith Group on 1/29/19 with conditions, and the Bedford Township Fire Department on 12/10/2018. Final site plan approval for Apple Creek Estates should be conditioned on addressing all issues and concerns prior to any development as stated in the MCDC, MSG, MCRC, and the Bedford Township Fire Department review letters. The developer has advised the Planning Department solar streetlights are being proposed for this development. The PUD agreement and master deed shall be submitted to the Township Attorney for review and approval.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have a representative for the development that would like to speak?
No.
Public hearing first. I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Support.
I have a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
I guess I did it backwards.
All right. Can you, Karen, can you call the roll?
Mr. Zebek?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Garvick?
Aye.
Mr. Jenkins?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mr. Anger?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Sorry, you can continue if you want to take your name and address for the record.
Yep, Brad Greeley, 3002 Lennox Court, Lambertville, Michigan. And I don't know if I could say it any better than Karen. We've kind of gone through the process here with the township, the county organizations, and everything else that we needed to cover, and just coming back here to get the final PUD through. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer those.
All right. Thank you. We might at the end.
Okay.
Now I'd like to open up the floor to anybody from the public that would like to speak on behalf of this public hearing. Okay, if you could come up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Ernest Fry at 1911 Woodland Drive. I'd like to ask what happened to the wooded area that was deemed wetlands? Is that being thrown aside now or what, for them to be able to build in there? They're talking about a wooded area that they're going to abolish.
I know you cannot build on wetlands, so as each house will be built, they will have to go before the state, and they would not be able to build on the wetlands themselves.
Okay, I talked to the guy with Midas Muffler's entire family owns that wooded area. And they have informed me that that is considered a wetlands. That's what I'm trying to figure out, how they're able to build where there is a wetlands.
Did you want to say something, Karen?
After the public comment has been taken, we can address some of these issues.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I had to say, so.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Seeing that there is none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move we close the public hearing.
Support.
Karen, could you take the roll?
Ms. Tinberry?
Aye.
Mr. Zebek?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Garbrick?
Yes.
Mr. Anger?
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. Did you want to speak now?
I don't know if you want me to address it or if you would like the applicant to address it, but we do have the DEQ wetland identification report and how that applies to the plan that has been submitted. You want to address it?
Yes, so going through the wetlands delineation process is something we've done with this whole property. So we commissioned a study by a wetlands professional, then submitted that to the state, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. They came down and reviewed our wetlands delineation, made minor changes to that, and then they sent that back to us as a map. And then we incorporated that map into our subdivision design. So our infrastructure does not touch any of the regulated wetlands, and then all of our home sites are out of the regulated wetlands. There are areas that are outside of the regulated wetlands where people could put sheds or outbuildings. They may have to cross those regulated wetlands. That would be something that each individual homeowner would have to seek a permit from the DEQ if they wanted to put a driveway through the wetlands to access something in the back of their property. But all of our infrastructure and the home construction is outside of any wetlands.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Hey, Brad, isn't that one of the reasons that you guys had to cut down on the amount of houses from your original?
Exactly. Our original approved plans were 69 units.
Okay.
And when we found out how many of the wetlands were regulated, we went through and redesigned from 69 to 20.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
Maybe this is to Karen, but is it accurate that the application was submitted in 2014?
It is because they first submitted with this 69 units, went through the MDEQ review, and the delineation plan was provided. We received everything, and they had to redesign the entire project to be able to develop on that land and stay out of the wetland area.
Okay.
So that is true. They first came with the initial, and then withdrew that and came back then and received their preliminary plan approval with the township board last year.
So it's by their choice that it wasn't the planning department that held it up 5 years, because that would not be
No.
Oh, I
Planning
see.
department did not.
We've had
Brad has a
a
different-
lot of delays across the board, but I wouldn't accuse the planning department of any of those.
Oh, good, thank you. Because you'll probably be coming back for another development. You want to be on their good side, gotcha. Okay, I was just concerned. I thought that was just way too long, but I understand now.
We went with the original application because the applicants did not change, same developers, so we just didn't require a new application.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion. Oh, Marty?
Just for the Planning Commission's information, there's really two issues for your consideration. This is a PUD, final plan review, so we'll be looking for a motion for that. And that should be conditioned upon approval of a rezoning. That's the other second, I guess, motion I'd like to see. So there really are two things happening. This is a PUD, so we want to approve the PUD plan conditioned upon also the property being rezoned to PUD, planned unit development. Both of these motions would be going on to the Township Board as a recommendation.
And I did want to mention to Brad, too, that we are one member short today, so would you still like to proceed tonight? Yes, please. Thank you. Karen?
And I'd also like to add that this is a one-phase project, so we will be looking at their site plan approval at this time as well, because it is for one phase.
Thank you.
I guess I have another question.
Oh, sure.
Is this going to be going on at the same time as the roundabout that I'm not in favor of is going on, the development of the roundabout, do you know? I mean, that's a lot going on at that one intersection. Or you don't know?
We don't know. We don't know what the outcome's going to be for the roundabout. We have a developer here that is ready to put a shovel in the
Okay.
ground, so.
All right, just wanted to clarify that. I'm gonna let you make the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final PUD site plan approval for for the planned unit development for 20-unit condominium project on parcel number 58-02-033-049-00 at 6695 Jackman Road, contingent upon all of the necessary and required approvals of all the reviewing agencies, including the fire department. Granting a variance on the required depth to width ratio for lots 11 through 18. Granting a waiver of the 100-foot perimeter setback of the development. The developer has provided a 65-foot setback prior to any final PUD site plan consideration, or, excuse me, the developer shall submit for approval by the township attorney any and all necessary PUD and condominium documents. Enter into a special assessment district for street lighting. Brad, are these going to be, these aren't going to be connected into the consumer's grid. I'll scratch that. The developer shall submit all color schemes, building materials, and building renderings. These are going to be individually built, so we won't need that. Assure that the PUD plan shall be in compliance with the requirements of the MDEQ respecting wetlands on the parcel. Submit landscaping and buffering plans for the approval, or for the following, for the approval, and establish a condominium association for the project. Was there anything else?
And subject to the rezoning approval.
And subject to the rezoning approval.
I'll support for discussion. I just have a question. Dennis, you said 033-04900, but the analysis says 05.
Oh, there was a land division.
Yes.
Okay, it's 05.
Okay, I support them.
All right. Karen, could you take the roll?
Mr. Jenkins,
Yes.
Ms. Tenenberry,
Yes.
Mr. Fritz,
Yes.
Mr. Garverick,
Yes.
Mr. Zebek,
Yes.
Mr. Anger.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Karen.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Yes.
like to also make a motion to recommend approval of the final PUD's rezoning to PUD. It complies with the master plan. It's less dense than the previous submittal.
Support.
You can take the roll, Karen.
Mr. Jenkins,
Yes.
Ms. Tinneberry,
Yes.
Mr. Zebek,
Yes.
Mr. Garverick,
Yes.
Mr. Fritz,
Yes.
Mr. Anger.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next, we will move on to open the public hearing regarding the Edward Rendle request for a rezoning of a plus or minus 7-acre portion of parcel number 5802-032-05560 from R2A Single Family Residential to RME Elderly Housing Residential, located east of Secor Road, otherwise known as 3199 Stearns Road, Lambertville, Michigan. Karen, can you give us some background?
Yes. Again, the owner of the property is Edward Rendle. The applicant is Shahid Imran of Flushing, Michigan. The subject address, 3199 West Stearns Road, currently R2A one-family residential zoned, requesting a rezoning to RME elderly housing. The master plan designates this area as a mixed use. The existing parcel consists of approximately 23.08 plus or minus acres with 1,171.63 feet of frontage on Stearns Road and a 66 plus or minus feet of frontage on Secor Road. The subject site is currently split zone with approximately 6.732 plus or minus acres of the 23.08 plus or minus acres being C3 general business zoned, and we do have an insert in your packet. The site is served by municipal water and sanitary sewer, and the surrounding zonings are to the north C2 shopping center business and R2A one-family residential, to the west C3 general business, south C1 local business, PUD planned unit development, R2A one-family residential, and to the east R2A one-family residential. The master plan adopted on October 28, 2015 designates this area as mixed use and further describes the intent to promote mixed uses and flexible redevelopment in areas outside of the village centers, having a mix of residential, office, and lower intensity commercial uses. The history of the zoning ordinance, including the zoning map adopted on May 5, 1977, identified the subject parcel as split zoned, and on January 8, 2019, the Township Board rezoned approximately 3.73 acres from R2A one-family residential to C3 general business, resulting in approximate 6.732 acres of C3 zone property to the west of the subject area. This request is to rezone approximately 7 plus or minus acres from R2A one-family residential to RME elderly housing residential, located immediately east of the C3 general business district. The RME zoning district would have approximately 480.74 feet of frontage on Stearns Road with a depth of approximately 610 feet, which leaves approximately 176.75 feet of R2A one-family residential zone property between the proposed rezoned area and the properties to the south, which include Hidden Valley subdivision and Creekside Crossing PUD. The balance of the parcel, approximately 9.242 acres, will remain R2A one-family residential zoned and is not being considered for any zoning amendment with this request. The site contains an existing home and accessory structures, which would have to be demoed as the existing structures collectively would not be totally contained nor meet required setbacks within one parcel as is required by ordinance. As well, the structures would not be a permitted use within a proposed zoning district. The Planning Department requested a review of the rezoning request be conducted by Lucy Fortin of the Manikin Smith Group and planner for Bedford Township. Ms. Fortin prepared an overall review of the subject area and concluded the proposed zoning and use is consistent with the goals, policies, and future land use map of the township's master plan. The analysis stated the potential uses permitted in an RME district are limited and are compatible with all surrounding uses in the immediate vicinity, and further provides a suitable transition use between the commercial land uses to the west and the adjacent single-family residential use to the south and east. In conclusion, it was suggested the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the Township Board to approve the rezoning request as presented. I also wanted to state that we have on file in the assessing department a land division application for the C3 to be split from this property. So that's currently underway right now. Should this property be rezoned, we may ask them to roll this into the same application and take care of that all at one time. But at least we do have the file, or the application on file for the land division.
Thank you, Karen. I will entertain a motion at this time to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
If you could call the roll.
Is that Dennis?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Mr. Garver?
Yes.
Mr. Zebek?
Yes.
Mr. Anger?
Yes. Public hearing is open. Is there an applicant that is here that would like to speak in anything at this point? If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Martin. My address is 5275 Conestoga, Flushing, Michigan. I'm one of the owners of Build Senior Living. I will be planning on building assisted living in that area.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add to what Karen wrote? It's pretty detailed, so that's
It
fine.
is pretty detailed. I guess what I would like to kind of mention is we really feel that it'll be a perfect transition from commercial to residential. Our buildings feel very home-like type of a feeling. It's a one-story building. We usually do very beautiful water features in front of the building, beautifully landscaped. So it's really going to enhance the actual area out there, and it's really going to make everything with that transition look really, really quite nice. So,
Thank you. You can have a seat, and then
okay.
if we have any questions at the end, we can. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on the public hearing? And just if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jim Sumner, 7360 Hidden Valley Drive. I think I need some clarification on what you said about combining, rolling into this one, into the previous township request that we had before. And how much difference is there on the western side of this? How much space is this right here on this map that was given out?
The total area for the C3,
Yes. This is just going to be adjacent to it?
yes, immediately adjacent to it. It's going to abut the C3 and provide a transitional zoning from the C3 to the RME to the currently zoned R2A.
And this stays at R2A back through, all the way around behind it also?
Correct.
Okay. And you said it was going to be a one-story building? Access off of Stearns Road?
If you could just address your questions to the chair, which is.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
I did have one question, and maybe you guys can answer it afterwards. Had, and this is purely speculation, I guess, but had this gentleman up here decided, or given his presentation to you before on the earlier issue, and you didn't like something about it as a group, would you have had to vote on what he presented in its entirety with either a yes or a no vote in its entirety? Or could he make changes at this particular meeting, and which may or may not be suitable to you? You understand what I'm saying? Is it legal for him to make a change at this meeting? That's what I want to know. In the event that he presented something here that you didn't like, but in your conversation with him or in your presentation with him, you said, well, if you'd make a change here, then I could vote for it. And he would say, okay, I'm agreeable to that. And then you would basically change your mind and vote for what he had to say. Can that be done? That's my question.
Thank you.
My name is Shirley Sumner. I'm at 7360 Hidden Valley Drive. I am still confused about the C3. Was it the C3 that was voted on in late November? Part of that is being changed over for the elderly housing?
Do you want us to wait, or do you want us to
'Cause
address it now?
It was all residential prior to the meetings in late 2018.
I'll just answer right now. What is being considered this evening is not part of what was rezoned to C3, previously rezoned to C3. The C3 stands as it was presented and approved by the Township Board. This is the property immediately to the east of the C3.
Right, so none of the C3 that was voted on in late 18 has been changed to accommodate the elderly housing.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Karen.
I'm Sally Dunn, 7365 Hidden Valley Drive. I guess that's all you need to know. I wanted to ask, since I'm the third house off Stearns, where it's showing the R2A number, third house in off Stearns, and the last time I saw, I have several different maps that have come out for what this is going to be. This is the new one with the elderly housing. But where it says subject parcel, that place, the last time we saw houses inside, drawing inside our Hidden Valley side of the street. And then inside that, which is almost now touching where this parcel is talked about, was supposedly a two-family condominium row of things around there. Now, there's nothing there now on the on this west side. Is that the west side? I guess it is.
East.
Okay, it's just showing blank. So has there been a change? Do we know anything about the change in the idea of having houses behind my home, which, as I said, is the third house off of Stearns, one or two farther up from the R2A marking on this little diagram. I just wondered, because it's not showing, it just showed when it came out in the mail this time, and it's just showing this new idea of the 7 acres for the, where's the man? I lost him. There he is. For the senior housing, which that doesn't bother me at all. What bothers me is possibly some of the housing behind my houses being something that is a little bit upsetting to me, and that is these houses that are being built down in Secor and Stearns, Secor and Smith, that are so like 5 feet apart, and they all look the same. And I hate to say it, but I would like to call it something like tenement housing. That's what it reminds me of. And that is what I'm worried about is going to go behind me. Just wondered if nothing's there now. Has that all been changed so far, or is it we still don't know what they want to do?
Nothing is being proposed for that parcel right now.
Who's speaking? I didn't see it. Oh, there you go. Okay, so it's still up in air.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Karen Kelly, I live at 7373 Hidden Valley. My question is, I was here for all those meetings, and the room was filled, and nobody cared on the board what people thought. They went ahead and voted the C3. Why didn't C1, I'm not sure. But the subject property, they're going to build senior housing. Is there any kind of a design? Do we have anything that's going to be approved? Do we get to look at that and see how it's going to look compared to the houses that surround it?
We could address that after the public hearing is closed.
Okay, thank you. We'll address that at the end of the public hearing.
All right. And so when you have the dead land around it, then that's open to more zoning request or zoning change, which means, again, you could put C3, you could almost do anything you want. That's the problem. You go from one to the next to the next. And these people bought these homes, had them built, and spent a lot of money, And then now we have vacant land behind them, and it can be changed at any time because nobody cared about what the public said. There was lots of people here, and it didn't matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this behalf? Seeing that there is none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
And you can take the roll.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Garverick?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Mr. Zebek?
Yes.
Mr. Anger?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And I do have to make the same statement to you guys that we are one member short tonight, so if you would like to proceed, we can. Or his answer was yes to proceed. Okay, would you like to address the?
Yes, when we consider rezoning, and even when we were considering the C3 rezoning, the public hearing notice that was mailed out to those owners or occupants within 300 feet only identified the area that was up for rezoning, that was the subject of the rezoning. We did not present any type of plan or layout. If something was presented, that would have been something that would have been a decision by the applicant to present something, but that doesn't always mean that that particular plan comes to fruition. Things change. So when the Planning Commission and Township Board are considering a rezoning, they take into consideration all uses that would be permitted within that zoning district, because until we receive a site plan for consideration and a submittal, that brings it more into a move forward with that type of a development. If this property is rezoned to RM2, or excuse me, RME, the applicant will then present, they will submit a site plan. It will go through the review process as if it were any type of submittal. It would be reviewed by the Drain Commission, the Road Commission, our Township Engineer, and our Fire Department, and then it would come back before the Planning Commission for site plan approval. So they will be required to go through the site plan approval process. If anybody in the audience would like to speak to Mr. Martin and his engineer after the meeting, you're always free to speak to them. But when we're presenting to the Planning Commission, we take into consideration anything that could be, any use that could be in that zoning district.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, Nancy?
Karen, we all understand what you said, but many of these people out here, they don't come to Planning Commission meetings or Township Board meetings. Could you explain what, the process, you did, but the process is, well, okay, I'll say, and then you correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
This piece of property that was purchased by someone.
It's still under the same ownership.
Oh, okay, that is going to be purchased, or even if it isn't. Let's use the owner. The owner comes and he has this piece of property and he wants to rezone it. The rezoning has nothing to do with what he might develop there, does it? I mean, it does.
To some degree, it does, because you have to make sure you're seeking a rezoning or a zoning district with what's your intent.
He has something in mind of what he wants to do there, so he has to have the zoning that would allow that.
Correct.
After that's approved, has nothing to do with the picture of what's going there. After that's approved, then they come back to the Planning Commission to show you in some kind of design and development what they want to do there. And until they come back with that picture, that plan, that design, for you to review and see if it meets all the qualifications, they can rezone it again. They can do anything there that, and you have to continue to send out those 300 feet.
That is correct.
And this has changed, so that's why they have gotten more than one picture.
Correct. And the portion to the east of this subject area is not part of this request. It will, at this point, and we don't know if it will ever be, there ever will be another request to rezone. There may or there may not. But at this point, it will remain as it is today, which is R2A, single-family residentially zoned.
And they can, whoever owns it can build houses in there
They can.
and nothing else. They can't put
can.
high rises, they can't put,
They cannot put multiple family in there. It's for single-family residential, the same as the development to the east of that, Hidden Valley. It's the same zoning as Hidden Valley.
right.
So it is for single-family residential.
And then finally, I
If I
want-
may, just for one moment.
Yes,
There are other uses in R2A that might not be for single-family homes. We do have some other uses that are permitted, but of course, that would have to be submitted for site plan approval as well.
And then finally, we have the public hearings because we do care what the public says, but at the same time, we have to legally operate under property rights. And if I don't own the property, I can come and voice my opinion about what the Planning Commission has taken an application for. But in offering my opinion, because I don't own the property, we can't overrule the property rights for what the public feels unless they're doing something outside of our zoning ordinance.
That is true. We also take a look at a transitional zoning, step-down zoning, however you want to put it, a buffer, where you may have a more intense use at an intersection, and then you would gradually move into your single-family residential. So we're looking at this as a buffer, a transitional zoning between your commercial zoning. This would be a buffer that would provide a less intense use to the property than, again, to the east. That's not under consideration at this time. We also take into consideration our master plan. Every 5 years, we look at our master plan and determine if the township is moving in the direction. We invite everyone from the public to come and participate when we review our master plan. We'll be doing that again in 2020. This particular piece of property is for mixed use, designated by the master plan, and we had our township planner review the application, and the determination for her was a recommendation to approve the rezoning because it does meet the intent of the master plan, and it is a transitional zoning.
Okay, thank you. I just knew that it could be confusing to people who aren't used to the language.
Anybody could, anytime you want to call, please call us, and we'll go over it again if you don't understand.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Yes, Ms. Jenkins?
Your mic's off.
The developer owner, you said this was going to be assisted living? Yes. Not individual apartments? Right.
Sam?
My only comment to that would be that once the zoning is approved, you can do anything within that RME zoning district. It wouldn't necessarily have to be assisted living. It could be apartments or whatever. So that's just a comment that I had to make. Is that Michigan?
Wrong song.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Because I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that?
The
Sorry.
song.
What I said was that once the zoning, if it's approved by the township board, they don't necessarily have to do the assisted living. They could do senior apartments or anything like that. The density probably wouldn't be that much different, but just keep in mind.
When you say assisted living, I think of nurses being present, and that's something similar to Aspen Grove. Are you familiar with Aspen Grove?
Not exactly. I believe that's more on the lines of a nursing home. I heard of the name. Basically what this is, it's truly the word, assisted living. Basically what we do is we build a beautiful place for elderly ones to live, and they get assisted in their day-to-day needs. Some are few, some are a little bit more. But the good news is we have seniors that can move in there that can be completely independent. They may drive a car, but they'll be very close to transitioning into that care factor, within maybe 6 months or less. Then at that point, they can stay right in their apartment all the way to end-of-life care. So we'll have the staff there. We have a gourmet chef that'll make meals 3 times a day, snacks anytime they want. The whole premise of what we're trying to do is I really feel the generation that we're accommodating, they spoiled us, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to spoil them back. So we're trying to give everything we possibly can back so they can enjoy their golden years. And the whole building is set up that way. We have beauty salons, we have movie theaters, everything we can possibly think of. And we talk to our residents at each individual building before we build the next. We ask them what interior colors they like. We ask them about the color of the furniture that we choose. Their own apartments, they can put whatever decor they want inside. So we really keep our ear to the ground, and we really want to know what our seniors like.
My mother was in assisted living, but there was nurses available.
Exactly.
You do have nurses. So it's not like Eagles. Well, maybe you're not familiar from someplace else. Eaglestone is independent living. It's not independent living?
It can transition from independent to full care. But usually those places that you're referring to, they're independent. If something happens in the individual falls in independent living, they can't have staff help them up.
Right.
So they have to call 911. They have to wait for an ambulance to get there. Here, our staff is trained. They can help them. They can check them over. They can call a nurse over, get them looked at. Obviously, if it's something major, then yes, we would have to send them out. But for the most part, all the care is done right there in the building.
How many units are you planning, or how many separate living spaces?
It's 68 to 72, somewhere in there. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I will entertain. Oh, Marty.
Let me just make a comment about the first gentleman that was up here.
Thank you.
He was asking whether Mr. Greeley, in his example, could change his application, which, those kinds of questions, and I'm not going to get into any legal wrangling here. This is not the place. But, it depends on what the application involves. If there's a PUD being presented and asked for, there might be some wiggle room in the development, and he may say, well, I had the plan drawn in a certain way for some screening or some trees, and I'm willing to change those things to meet the consensus or some of the feelings or some of the comments from the public at the public hearing. So those kinds of things that don't overly impact the entire application are, in my view, open for some modifications. For example, if there's a rezoning, which I'm sure he's referring to at the last meeting, the applicant was allowed to reduce his request and the land area. He was not asking to change the request from a commercial zoning to an industrial or to a multiple family or something else like that. He withdrew part of the land area from his request, which was something that was allowed because it didn't impact, it impacted actually less of the land area than what was in the original application. So that was a situation where that was allowed because he wasn't changing his request for a different type of permitted uses or different type of a zoning, like to an industrial or multiple family or something like that. And it's very specific to the situation.
Thank you, Marty. All right, I will entertain a motion at this time, if anyone would like to.
I move Dennis makes the motion. That's my motion.
I'd like to make a recommendation, or motion to recommend approval of the rezoning for parcel number, or from R2A to RME on a portion of 7-acre parcel, portion of parcel number 5802-032-055-060, from R2A Single Family Residential to RME Elderly Housing Residential, located east of Seco Road, otherwise known as 3199 Stearns Road. And the reasons being that it's consistent with the township master plan goals and policies, follows the master plan's future land use designation for mixed uses, provides for suitable transition uses between the commercial land uses in the core business district of the township and the adjacent single-family residential uses. It is supported by adequate utility and road infrastructure, and adequate room is being preserved both south and east of the subject portion of buffering and/or screening to alleviate some of the possible negative impacts of the potential higher density residential uses.
I'd like to just correct the number to be just 60 at the end.
Thank you.
I knew you were going to ask that, so.
Support, or
Actually,
did you
that's
get support? I
No,
wasn't-
would you like to support?
Yes, I'll support it.
We have a motion and support. Karen, can you take the roll?
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Ms. Tinberry?
Yes,
Mr. Garvrick?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Mr. Zebek?
Yes.
Mr. Anger?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Karen.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
There was one question that I forgot that I said I would address and I didn't. And I can't remember who commented on it, but we were discussing the land division application. Currently, this property is under the same ownership as it has been for years. There are no new owners. They have signed all of the applications for the rezoning requests. The applicants that are seeking to rezone to C3 will, the application is signed by the current property owner, and we are moving through that process. Should this portion of this property be rezoned, there's a recommendation, should the township board rezone it, it still will, may be under the same ownership as it is currently, so we may keep those moving together rather than have one application come in and another application come in for the rezoning. That's what I meant when I said we may move those together for the land divisions, because we do not want to create a split zone parcel as we have had for many years, since 1977. So that's the only thing I meant with that. It doesn't mean it's going to be combined. It doesn't mean it's going to be under the same ownership at any, in the future. It just means that we're going to keep those moving together, so not to create a split zone parcel on what is left. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but if not, you can see me and I will go over it again.
Thank you, Karen.
I just want to have you clarify that the owner of the property, original owner of the property, has allowed these, has signed off to say these people can come and ask for rezoning, the C3 and the RME, and the R2A is still owned by the original owner, and you have not received any other applications or requests for rezoning of that R2A property. It's still residentially zoned.
That is correct. The entire parcel is still under the same ownership. We have notarized signatures that state that the applicants that have presented these rezonings have the owner's permission to speak on their behalf.
Right. I just want to make sure there's no surprises. Thank you.
All right. Next, we will move on to public comment. This is for anybody that would like to speak on anything. Seeing that there is none, we will move on to new information. Karen?
Possibly at the next meeting. We have a couple of zoning ordinances that we are currently taking a look at, possibly making some amendments. One of them being how we approve a temporary special event. And so it's in the early stages, but we may provide you with some additional information for your input to see, you know, if you kind of agree with the way we're moving forward with it, or our thoughts, or if you have some additional input. Like I said, it's early on, so I'm not certain, but I just wanted to let you know that you may be receiving some information. We may send that through an email to you, so you have it in advance of the next meeting.
Thank you, Karen. Is there any commissioner or staff comment? No? With none, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Meeting adjourned.